Hey everyone, this is Gregg Schutze for ReadyForTheDraft.com. This is the Ready for the Draft podcast, episode 4. Lots to get into. Week 0 of the college football season in the books. We will break down Miami versus Florida, Arizona versus Hawaii. I'll talk about what I saw in each of those games. I'll also reveal the second annual All Schutze Team. These are the guys who are my favorite players throughout the college football season and the draft, regardless of where they were drafted. There are guys all 3 days, even a couple of undrafted free agents in this group. And these are guys that I think will make an impact at some point at the next level. May not be this year, but names to watch in the future. And then, of course, we're going to take a look at the full slate of games week 1. Games start Thursday. That's so exciting. Thursday, August 29th. I can't wait for the season to begin. I'll be watching games all throughout the weekend and be able to break down some of the different matchups that I'll be looking for. So let's go ahead and jump right into things. Before we get into Miami and Florida and what I saw, we have to talk about Alabama, specifically their star middle linebacker, Dylan Moses. Just announced that he tore a knee ligament. I'm assuming it's his ACL, which is likely going to put him out for the entire season. This was a guy I listened to an interview from Ian Fitzsimmons there on ESPN, and he was talking about how when he met with Dylan Moses, an unassuming kid, a guy who just wanted to play ball and study, a guy who wasn't really looking for the limelight. So even though he has this injury, I don't know that he's necessarily going to be a guy who's going to look to enter the 2020 draft. But this was supposed to be the year that he was going to cement himself as a first-round pick, take over for Mack Wilson as the true leader of that defense. This was a guy that was going to be calling all the plays, 86 tackles a season ago, 10 tackles per loss, 3.5 sacks. He's the heart and soul of that defense. They already lost, another linebacker on that side in Joseph McMillan. So, what is Bama going to do? They're going to end up playing a couple of true freshmen. And so it's going to be, they're going to be playing Duke to start out the season. And I know Duke, that's going to be everyone's going to look at that and say that's going to be an easy win. And you're probably right, especially now that they've lost Daniel Jones. But, you're going to have to sit there. And I'm sorry, it was Joshua McMillan there on the inside there with Dylan Moses. So you will have two true freshmen essentially starting there on the inside linebacker spot, essentially looking to call out the plays. So what does that do for Bama's defense? That's going to be a key cog, when you're talking about teams that are projected to be potential playoff teams. You lose McMillan, you lose Moses, the heart and soul of your defense. That's really, what is Nick Saban going to do? He's the king of developing prospects, and he's going to have to, we'll have to see what kind of tricks he has up his sleeve to be able to rebound from this. I think this is a huge blow for Alabama. So let's go ahead and jump into what we saw week 0. Florida taking on Miami, Camping World Stadium, Orlando, Florida. The number 8 Gators come away with the victory, 24-20. And, I'll tell you what, this was kind of an ugly game. Very undisciplined play. The secondary from Florida especially, they had Miami pinned on a 4th and 34. Just stay away from the receivers and you end up winning the game. And they get called for pass interference. And the offensive line play, we talked about that being a potential issue, and neither line looked very good. But it's week 0, and Florida was able to sneak away with the victory. I think you saw some of that running back competition between DJ Dallas and LaMichael Pirine. I thought those were the two standouts really on the offensive side of the football, along with Brevin Jordan there for Miami, the sophomore tight end. But DJ Dallas, I talked about the strength and the power, and I thought that he did a really good job. He's really a one cut and go type of guy. But he had a 50-yard touchdown. It was a Wildcat, shot through the hole, ran through 2 tackles. That was one of the things. Florida's defense really needs to shore up their tackles if they want to make any noise in the SEC. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. But broke 2 of the tackles, and then showed speed down the sideline. Outran Jeremiah Moon, the linebacker there, for a 50-yard touchdown. 5'10", 215 pounds, the junior. DJ Dallas, 12 carries, 95 yards and a touchdown, along with 4 receptions for another 37 yards. To me, DJ Dallas, again, he and Brevin Jordan were the two guys that stepped up the most for the Hurricanes. Speaking of Brevin Jordan, only a true sophomore, so he won't be eligible for the 2020 draft, but he's a name to get to know. 6'3", 245 pounds, big body guy, chunk plays on offense, wide receiver speed, showed decent blocking ability there on the outside. He needed to do a better job of shielding the defenders from the football. I thought that was one of the things that you didn't really, you wanted to see a little bit more from him. He had a 25-yard touchdown, good concentration on a post. Ultimately held on to the football for his score. But I thought the athleticism better than average blocker as well. That wide receiver speed, he's going to be a weapon there on the outside for the Canes moving forward. Jaron Williams, that's going to be one of his go-to targets. He didn't really. You wanted to see more from KJ Osborne, the 6', 205-pound senior transfer from Buffalo. Didn't really get to do a whole lot. Definitely a guy who can be a target over the middle in traffic. The poise, a guy who can play outside the numbers as well. I thought his blocking was really on display. You saw him, blocking on the edge for Mike Hartley. Mike Harley, and then another block to spring Jeff Thomas for a big gain. So I think that's one of the things that that KJ Osborne is bringing to that wide receiver core is some physicality. And again, 6', 205. He's looking a lot bigger than he did when he was at Buffalo. He's someone to watch there as he continues to build chemistry with the quarterback, Jaron Williams. Now, Jaron Williams was sacked, I believe, 8 times in the game. That offensive line really needs to get better. He was 19 of 30, 214 yards and a touchdown. That touchdown pass thrown to Brevin Jordan. I think when you look at that's really what stood out to me for Miami was DJ Dallas, KJ Osborne more as a blocker, and then Brevin Jordan. I thought most of that play though was left to be desired. Jeff Thomas showed flashes, but just 2 receptions for 28 yards. When I take a look at my notes, very elusive in space, good route runner, but also muffed a punt, with Miami up 13-10. That ultimately, led to a score. Van Jefferson jumped on the football there. Miami defensively, Shaq Quarterman, I hyped him up as one of the better inside linebackers in the game. But the issue with it was, he really struggled in pass protection. He's a thumper. He's that prototypical thumper that Miami likes to recruit and likes to bring in. And you see that, Denzel Perryman, I compared him to Perryman last week. And you look at what Shaq's been able to do, over 250 tackles in his career, 11 sacks, 8 pass breakups, has an interception to his credit. But he was one of those guys, he and Michael Pinckney both fallen, victim to the play action, really putting themselves out of position. And I thought that was one of the things that was really frustrating. I was waiting to see more from Shaq Quarterman. Had a really nice play there, on a run play, was able to, inside out, get outside, break down, and drop Pirine there in the open field. So as a playing against the run, has that sideline to sideline speed, can play inside out, but his issue really is against the pass, and you have to be a 3-down linebacker if you're going to get drafted in the first 2 days of the draft. So I thought this game really exposed Shaq Quarterman. He's going to have to go back to the drawing board and really put together some better tape in coverage. Same goes for Michael Pinckney. I thought he also got lost quite a bit with some of the play action. So, there's some things that Miami needs to work on there. I thought Trajan Bandy, the 5'9", 190-pound corner, showed some physicality, a big hitter on the outside, really comes up to hit some guys, closes really hard, but he struggled to get off some blocks, some wide receiver blocks. Tyree Cleveland really cleared him out to spring a big gain for the tight end, Kyle Pitts. And he's just that lack of size. He's going to be someone who I think is going to be a slot corner or a nickel. But again, a guy who is very physical, and I thought that was one of the things that stood out to me. Pat Bethel, 6'3", 290 senior, the defensive tackle. You saw some power driving his man into the backfield, dropped the running back for loss. That was really the only play that you saw him really be effective. Needs to work on that pad level when he stays low and really fires into that offensive lineman. He can drive the man back and be disruptive in the backfield. That's really what Miami needed. Just play in and play out. Just one tackle, which went for loss in the game for him. Now, when you look at Florida offensively, because there's a lot to like on the defensive side of the football, offensively. Felipe Franks up and down game. He was one very frustrating. Some very late over the middle, threw behind a receiver, pass picked off by Amari Carter in the fourth quarter. He put a ball, beautiful ball on Jeffrey Hammond for 40 yards. But very inconsistent, very strong runner, big physical kid, 6'6", 245 pounds. But there was this really head-scratching play, threw a pick in the fourth quarter with just 4:29 to play, threw it to Romeo Finley. I don't even know who he was throwing it to, but apparently he was throwing it right to Romeo Finley, and that could have cost them the game. Felipe Franks just needs to relax. He also, again, playing behind a line that had to replace 4 starters. And, when you're behind that line, they didn't really gel a whole lot. I said that Nick Buchanan's really going to have to step up this season if they're going to take a step forward with that offense. He's got his hands full with this unit right now. Michael Pirine, I think, proved to be a top 10 running back. I don't have him in my top 10 right now, and I'm scratching my head wondering why. He should be a top 10 running back. Why? Because he can do everything. He has the burst on the outside. He has a burst through the hole as well. Excellent vision. I thought that was one of the things that you saw, the cutback ability, his balance to run through tackles, lower body strength, just keeps those legs churning, but really a good receiver out of the backfield. If you look at the stat line, don't let the stat line fool you when you look at it for Michael Pirine. 10 carries, 42 yards, but 6 receptions for 23 yards and a touchdown. 6 receptions out of the backfield. And then, the blocking. This is a guy who can do everything. He was a lead blocker for Felipe Franks on a fourth and 1 run coming off the edge, and picked up the backer and ultimately allowed Franks to pick up the first down. To me, LaMichael Pirine is definitely a top 10 running back. They just need consistent offensive line play to get him going. And, I think as the season goes along, if that offensive line continues to gel, we're going to see LaMichael Pirine's name continue to rise up draft boards. 5'11", 218-pound senior. Keep an eye on LaMichael Pirine. So, you look at that, the receivers, because Felipe Franks struggled, 17 to 27, 254 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. Really not much of a standout there on the offensive side of the ball. Kadarius Toney, he had an awesome play. So explosive. Very very quick. Quick throw to the perimeter. Very elusive in space. Ran through a tackle. And ultimately a 66-yard touchdown. 5'11", 194-pound junior. Now that he's a junior, I could see him potentially coming out at the end of the season. He's a splash play kind of guy, but he's someone that comes off the bench as a receiver, as a running back. He's a guy to watch. But, man, that defense, that was a lot of fun to watch. And really, you wonder, is it the offensive line from Miami and their struggles, or is it really Florida, having a breakout game defensively? But Jabari Zuniga, we'll talk about C.J. Henderson in a minute. He's already a known quantity. Jabari Zuniga, I think people already knew who he was. 6'4", 257-pound senior. But, man, he consistently getting into the backfield, being disruptive, blocked by the tight end and drove Brevin Jordan back, able to get off the block, got to the quarterback just as Jonathan Greenard, who we're going to talk about here in a minute, flushed him out of the pocket, able to slip inside the right tackle to drop the running back behind the line, early penetration, slowing up the run, burst and a rip under the left tackle's pad level, basically forced a hold and forced the quarterback up in the pocket, ultimately getting sacked by another defensive lineman. Just that burst off the ball, really low on his get off, getting under the left tackle, ran by the left tackle ultimately, and he's somebody who I knew that I wasn't expecting the burst. I think he was timing up the snap count, took advantage of the fact that he was playing against a very inexperienced quarterback, and the snap count really didn't get changed up, so he was timing that very well. So a very smart move by Jabari Zuniga. And look, he started for a reason over Ja'Kai Polite. I think it's the consistency, his ability to play both the run and the pass. He's a sleeper guy. He's someone who I think is going to be a day 2 guy. He's not going to be a first rounder, but he'll be one of those day 2 picks, and a guy who I think is going to stick on an NFL roster for a long time. Which leads us to Jonathan Greenard, 6'3", 263-pound senior transfer from Louisville. And the last time we saw Jonathan Greenard, it was in a Louisville uniform, hurt his hip in the opener against Alabama, had surgery, and then ultimately transferred to Florida. Greenard, was known as an edge rusher there with Louisville. And in his sophomore season, 48 tackles, 15.5 for loss, 7 sacks. And this was a guy who just repeatedly was in the backfield, so quick off the ball, beating the left tackle off the snap, very quick to the quarterback. One of the things that he needs to work on is making sure that he breaks down, able to bring down the quarterback. But he just seemed to be in there left and right, just the burst, just running right around the left tackle, running around the right tackle, just basically getting to him at will. That burst, that's really the biggest thing I think that you saw more than anything else. But he can dip, he can run the arc, he can bend a little bit coming off the edge. Really the biggest thing is going to be that hip. Can that hip hold up? It's a surgically repaired hip. So, if he can show that hip is 100% and he has a big year, he's somebody who, as you continue to get more game film on, he's someone to keep an eye on. And you weren't expecting that quickness coming off the ball. But if Greenard and Zuniga can wreak havoc in the SEC, that's going to bode well for both of their draft stock. Okay, let's go ahead and talk about C.J. Henderson now. 6'1", 202 junior. I thought C.J. Henderson looked great in coverage. He had one play where he got to the receiver a little early, got called for defensive pass interference. It was actually the tight end, Brevin Jordan, didn't time that jump very well, but he didn't allow a touchdown in coverage in 2018, and only one reception every 19 snaps in coverage, according to Pro Football Focus. Just a guy who was so fluid with his hips, never panics. He was trailing Brevin Jordan in coverage, and then just ultimately undercuts the route. Able to dive in front to knock the ball down. A guy who drives very well on the football. Very good both in press man coverage and in bail. I think the biggest thing that he needs to work on is the tackling, or the lack thereof. He dove at DJ Dallas's feet. Very poor effort on DJ Dallas's 50-yard touchdown. I want to see him line somebody up and really stick him. He's one of those guys that is going to be great in coverage, but is he going to be able to come up and contribute in the running game? Is he going to be a guy who's going to be able to really be a force there on the outside? I think when it comes to locking down receivers, he can definitely do that. Off coverage against Jeff Thomas on a post corner, contact at the top of the route, throw was to the outside. He was able to drive on the ball and essentially undercut the route, get a hand in, knock the football away. C.J. Henderson, to me, is a guy who continues to get better and better. We should see him as a first rounder when it's all said and done. Now, the flip side, we talked about Marco Wilson coming back from injury, the redshirt sophomore. He's not afraid to come up and hit you. But man, he got blocked quite a bit on the outside. Very poor effort tackling as well on the DJ Dallas touchdown. Pulled down Jeff Thomas on that 4th and 34 with just a minute 31 to play. Could have cost him the game. Just a lot of mental errors and mental mistakes. It may be, just the nerves of coming back after being out. But, that's something that Marco Wilson's really going to have to shore up. And then, David Reese, the 6'1", 239-pound inside linebacker, showed some pretty good lateral quickness. Strung out KJ Osborne on a reverse, good speed to the outside to bring down DJ Dallas as well. He's just a consistent performer. 5 tackles, a half tackle for loss for him. Zuniga, 6 tackles, 1.5 sacks, 3 tackles for loss in a quarterback hurry. And his running mate, Jonathan Grenard, in the buck position, 6 tackles, 1.5 tackles for loss. 1.5 sacks, 2 tackles for loss, and a forced fumble to his credit. CJ Henderson, just 2 tackles and a pass breakup on the day. So those were the guys that I was really keeping an eye on. Adam Schuler is a guy that I really want to see continue to play well. 6'4", 275, playing defensive tackle. Has a burst to close onto the football. Does a pretty good job. He initiated the contact against the right guard on a play, gets into his body with his left arm, keeps his right arm free, able to push off with the left arm, wrap up the running back with the right arm in the hole for little gain. You can want to continue to see that from him. Didn't have the greatest year in his first year at Florida after transferring from West Virginia, but I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do moving forward. He's really a guy that I think can continue to develop. Probably going to be a day 3 pick, but somebody who I think can perform at the next level. All right, so Florida, Miami, we've covered that just a little bit. We're going to go ahead and move to Arizona and Hawaii. Hopefully you stayed up and got to watch this. Aloha Stadium in Honolulu, Hawaii. This was the battle, as I said, of Khalil Tate and Cole McDonald. And it wound up being Khalil Tate versus Chevin Cordero. Why? Well, Cole McDonald, we talked about the up and down season, and through the last 5 games, the 7 interceptions thrown, including I think 2 apiece in 3 of the last 4 games. 29 of 41, 378 yards, 4 touchdowns, but also 4 interceptions. And the 4 interceptions were ugly. This was a guy who can throw the ball on the run, but wouldn't just take what the defense gives him. He was trying to force the football way too much, trying to just force it down the field, force it into tight windows, throwing late across his body over the middle, just a lot of things that you just don't do as a quarterback. And I thought that his stock really took a huge hit, and ultimately he got benched because of it. He looked good at times, in the pocket, no pressure, very good. They put a stat up there during the game, 62.1% of his passes completed, with no pressure. When he's blitzed, 58.6%, and then under pressure, 31.6%. And so when Arizona got some pressure on him, he really struggled mightily. And that's one of the things you were hoping that you'd see some of that development, and you just didn't see that. He could go through his progressions, find the open receiver, and it was just one of those things to where he would look so good on a couple of plays, find the open man, hit a guy in stride, put the ball to the outside where only his man can get it, and then the next play he'll be rolling out and he'll throw across his body, and you're looking at it just wondering what in the world happened. He was part of the reason why Arizona was staying in the game. Hawaii was scoring at will against this Arizona defense. Arizona, really struggled. You had, Colin Schooler, they were running Tampa 2 part of the time, and you're asking Colin Schooler, to really man the middle of that field. And, I thought that was something that, Colin Schooler, he has a nose for the football. He moves very well all over the place, can drop a little bit into coverage, had a leap, read the quarterback eyes, leap in the air to tip a pass up, ultimately intercepted by the corner, Lorenzo Burns. He's somebody who plays very well against the run, very quick to diagnose, not the best athlete, but a guy who trusts his eyes very well. I just thought that he might have been a step slow in coverage at times. So granted, he's going up against the high-powered Hawaii attack, so I really want to see what Colin Schooler can do moving forward, against some pro-style offenses. When we talk about Khalil Tate, Another game where he threw for over 300 yards. 22 of 39, 361 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 13 carries, 106 yards. Very dynamic in space as a runner. I think that's one of the things that stood out, for sure. He's somebody who does a very good job escaping pressure, able to roll out and so effortless with his delivery. Just a flick of the wrist, throwing the ball over 40 yards down the field. Um, Able to throw the ball across the field on a comeback, put the ball on the money to the receiver. I thought that he's somebody who can put the ball away from the defender where only his receivers can get to it. So he's somebody who I think is continuing to develop as a quarterback, but he doesn't fit the Kevin Sumlin mold there at Arizona. He's more of a Rich Rod type quarterback, and Rich Rod's not there anymore. So it's kind of weird having Khalil Tate. It's really a quarterback in the wrong system. But man, this game went down to the wire. 45-38, 10 seconds to play. Ball at the 31-yard line. Khalil Tate gets the snap, gets pressured, rolling to his right, ultimately decides to take off. A lot of green grass in front of him, and gets tackled 1 yard shy of the end zone. So Hawaii ends up winning 45-38. I mean, it was just a crazy, crazy game. One thing to really take away is Cedric Byrd, the 5'9", 175-pound receiver, played his first year a season ago as the number 2 guy to John Ursua after transferring from Long Beach City College. This kid is for real. Just so quick off the line, very quick and sudden burst. Got up the seam, ran by defenders, has a pretty good wiggle, can run pretty good routes as well. Very quick, can eat up that cushion in a hurry. Getting vertical, ran by safeties, corners, you name it. Anything that you lined up in front of him, just so sudden. I mean, that was the thing that was awesome to watch. Toe tap along the sideline, making a play. Had a 30-yard touchdown on a post. Came across. Schooler was in that Tampa 2. Made the reception. The concentration. It was after, not before Schooler, but after he crossed the face of Schooler. Kept the concentration, ultimately hauled in the football. That was touchdown number 4. Someone who just seemed to always be open, always be that safety valve for Cole McDonald or Chevin Cordero, whoever was playing quarterback. Ended up with 14 receptions, 224 yards, and those 4 touchdowns. And then his running mate was JoJo Ward, also 5'9", 170 pounds. 4 receptions, 70 yards, and a touchdown. Another guy who could get vertical, ran by a cornerback on a 39-yard touchdown with the go route. 3rd straight game with a touchdown. Did a good job coming back for the ball in a curl route. Snaps off the route underneath, with bail coverage, taking what the defense can give him. 2/3 of his receptions in 2018 went for a first down. So he's someone to watch. I think both Cedric Byrd and JoJo Ward are guys who can be slot receivers at the next level. Jace Whitaker, the 5'11", 185-pound corner, the senior, only played in 1 game last year due to injury. I thought he closed well on Byrd on a couple of out routes. Very sure tackler. Quarterback rolled out, and this is where he kind of baited Cole McDonald. Ultimately forced a throw, threw it across his body over the middle, and really just kind of set him up very well. Thought that the receiver was open. He got outside in, undercut the route to ultimately pick off the pass. So I thought Jace Whitaker had a pretty good game defensively for Arizona. Padello for Hawaii. Kalmana Padello again showed that he's an edge rusher. He's an undersized guy, 6 foot 225, but can be an edge rusher coming off, can bend very well coming off the edge. He's a former walk-on. And then we were talking about guys who could potentially be fullbacks, and Dayton Ferruta actually got the start. 5 carries, 42 yards, and a touchdown. Big dude, 5'11", 250 pounds, very punishing runner. He's a former linebacker. He was hit at the 2-yard line, lowered his pad level, and was able to run it in for the touchdown on a 4-yard touchdown run. Just a guy who has power in his legs and a surprising burst, but helmet on the football, ultimately fumbled, recovered by Arizona. I believe that led to a score as well. So he needs to work on ball security just a little bit there. And I did mention in the um, podcast before, I was talking about who filled in for Jelani Tavai, and one of those linebackers that stepped in, not only Pavihi and Jeremiah Pritchard, but the other one was Cheyenne Sanatoa, and Cheyenne Sanatoa actually passed away on July 4th, and very touching moment. They were talking about him during the game, and this is a season that Hawaii is dedicating to him. It seemed like still fresh in everybody's mind, just over a month, month and a half, not even 2 months before, after his passing, that they had to take the field. So my thoughts and prayers definitely to Hawaii on that. Hawaii, man, it was crazy. Delay a game, a false start. Hawaii up 45-35, 3:58 to play. A couple more false starts. This is Arizona. Then there's a timeout. So essentially, it ended up being a 53-yard field goal. It got sent back a good 15 yards, but Lucas Haversick there for Arizona, just tough as nails, able to boot that field goal to bring it 45-38. But that was just kind of the day. Both these games very ugly, disappointing, it's in some respects, but you wonder if that's what's going to carry over into week one. Are we going to see a lot more teams that are going to struggle up front offensively, defensively? Are we going to see, some undisciplined play? That's really going to be something that everyone should be watching out for. Arizona's running back, J.J. Taylor, 5'6", 184, showed some good burst, ran through some tackles as well. Surprising power for a guy his size. Excellent balance to run through, maintain his footing. 14 carries, 67 yards and a touchdown. Also a catch for 13 yards on the day for J.J. Taylor. Let's see. Ilm Manning, the 6'4", 280-pound sophomore there at left tackle, did a good job really taking defensive ends up the field, showed good quickness, ultimately got injured in the fourth quarter, but a guy who he looked like he'll be okay and be able to return. But I thought Ilm Manning was someone who made an impression in the game, a guy who was very light on his feet. Want to see what he can do in Mountain West play. And then Cody Creason there for Arizona, the right guard, 6'4", 295-pound senior, showed pretty good leverage, hand placement, and pass protection. Can also be a drive blocker as well in the running game. So he's someone to watch there in the Pac-12 up front for the Wildcats. So Hawaii ends up getting it done. They get the W. So those were really the games that I tuned in to. Also got to catch Villanova getting the victory over Colgate 34-14 there at Andy Kerr Field in Hamilton, New York. This was surprising. In August, that was 65-degree weather there for that game. So I thought that was definitely quite interesting. A couple of junior quarterbacks to keep an eye out for next season. Grant Brenneman, a guy who showed some good dual threat ability. Daniel Smith, the transfer from Campbell, really stood out. 14 of 29. So some inconsistency as a passer, but 205 yards, 3 touchdowns. The biggest thing, no interceptions. Also ran the ball 7 times for 37 yards and a score. Malik Fisher, the junior defensive end, 6'4", 255 pounds, showed pretty good speed coming off the edge. But I thought he got placed too upright. I want to see him get a lower pad level. And then I think really the guy that I wanted to watch was Abu Darami Saware. 11 tackles and a tackle for loss. Also got to return some punts. Showed really good ability to wrap up. Textbook tackler, will come up and hit in the run game. Looks to jam receivers. But he got beat by one of the receivers there for Villanova, Chenga Hodge, on a 45-yard reception for a touchdown. It was a double move. Really kind of jammed him there on this. I guess it was kind of more of a stop and go, and then he kind of stopped, ran right by the corner, and Darami Sawari gave up the touchdown. But other than that, that was the only reception for Changa Hodge. Des Boykin just had one catch for 16 yards. Javon Jones, 2 receptions for 25 yards. So he was a guy who I thought did a really good job on the outside once he kind of settled down. Did a really good job in coverage, showed it, in phase with the receiver, 50-50 ball, able to go up, elevate with the receiver, get the ball, get his hand in between the receiver's hands to knock the football away. I thought he does a really good job there on the outside with his hands. So he's someone to watch there. The other guy to watch is a defensive tackle. Defensive end, Nick Wheeler. 4 tackles, a sack, 3 tackles for loss on the day. He's 6'2", 255 pounds, kind of undersized. 9 sacks a season ago. He's somebody who did a really good job attacking the chest of the right guard on the outside, then a spin back inside and got to the quarterback. FCS All-American a season ago. I think he's the other guy to watch there. That was for Colgate. And then Youngstown State and Sanford. Youngstown State getting the victory 45-22. That's Bo Pelini's crew there. The guy that really stood out to me in this game, let's see. If I had to pick one guy, it'd probably be Zaire Jones, the safety, 6 foot, 200 pounds, 5 tackles, 2 interceptions on the day. The transfer from Vanderbilt just showed a good job, being a leader there in the secondary. Did a really good job. Both of his interceptions were off of tip balls, just happened to be in the right place at the right time. Did a good job reading the quarterback's eyes. A leader there for the Youngstown State Penguin secondary, and somebody who I think, if he continues to play well, could get invited to some of the All-Star games as we go forward. So those were the 4 games in week 0. Got to watch all 4. I was really excited. So we're going to take a pivot here just real quick. We're going to go ahead and take a look at the second annual All Schutze Team. So if you go to the website, it talks about the start of the 2019 NFL season, kicking it off. Some of my favorite players at each position that I'm most looking forward to see play at the next level, and then I see ultimately making an impact at some point. Not all of them are going to make an impact right away, but it's a group that you're definitely going to want to watch for going forward in the NFL. Mix of rookies from all 3 days of the draft, and include some guys really flying under the radar. So on the offensive side of the ball, I've got 4 quarterbacks, and these were guys that I watched throughout the season. And if you listen to my podcast, there were guys that I continually talked about. Now, Dwayne Haskins of Ohio State went to the Redskins with the 15th overall pick. You knew I was going to be talking about him because he was a guy at the beginning. I was pounding the table, religiously, week in and week out, because everyone was talking about him as a legit pro prospect. And I said, hold up. I've seen him throw a lot of underneath routes, but I haven't seen him really throw the football down the field. I haven't really seen a whole lot out of him. He hasn't really thrown a whole lot in the route tree. And then there was that 3-game stretch in the middle of the season where he had to put Ohio State's offense on his back because the running game went non-existent, and he did that. So Dwayne Haskins, it's going to take him a little bit of time to develop there with the Redskins. I understand that. I know that that's going to happen. But look, Dwayne Haskins, to me, I think he's a legit pro prospect. Give him some time there in Washington with Jay Gruden, and I think you're going to have something going there. Will Grier out of West Virginia, 3rd-round pick to the Carolina Panthers. Look, Cam Newton's the guy. No doubt about that. But Will Grier, he's just a guy, he's fun to watch. He's a gunslinger, that gunslinger mentality. If Cam Newton goes down, we may see Will Grier get a shot. Ryan Finley was one of the guys that I thought was the most NFL ready of the quarterbacks in the draft. And, he didn't have the highest ceiling, but I thought he had one of the higher floors. Not the best in terms of arm talent, but a guy who was just very efficient, just continued to get better and better there for the Wolfpack. 4th-round pick of why does it say the Jets on the website? He went to Cincinnati, went to the Bengals, and it's one of those things, this could be a perfect match for him. He's got the head coach, Zach Taylor, and Andy Dalton there. He's kind of a somewhat of another Andy Dalton type. Not the most mobile guy, not the best arm, but a guy who just can be efficient and can get the job done. He's played well in the preseason so far. Keep an eye on Ryan Finley going forward. And then Jarrett Stidham at Auburn. New England Patriots, 4th round pick 31 of the 4th round. I was kind of hard on Jarrett Stidham a little bit, but when the more I sat there and thought about it, this was a guy who I think can translate to the next level. One of the smarter guys, there in the league, and a guy who, it came down to some consistency there at Auburn, and you really wanted to see him take command and really take his game to the next level, and you just didn't see that. But a guy who I think, he's going to be a better pro than he was a college player there at Auburn, in my opinion. So the running backs. Let's see. I've got, 5 running backs here that really stand out to me. Miles Sanders of Penn State going to the Eagles, 21st pick of the 2nd round. Miles Sanders to me is a guy who, he got his shot after playing behind Saquon Barkley, and he made the most of it, and really showed that he has that burst, that lateral quickness, and a guy who can be a runner both between the tackles and on the outside and can be a tremendous receiver. Eagles loaded at running back, especially with Jordan Howard there as the physical back. They brought him in from the Bears. But I think Miles Sanders is a guy who's going to be able to carve out and ultimately be a guy who can challenge Jordan Howard to be the number 1 running back there in Philly. Now the Rams, you have Todd Gurley and his arthritic knee. You needed to take a running back. So what do you do in round 3? You take Darrell Henderson out of Memphis. Now Darrell Henderson's one of my favorite players, bar none at any position in the 2018 college football season and in the 2019 draft. 1,900 yards on the ground, and this was a guy, basically you just gave him a crease. Just give him a crease, and he's gone. So he was so much fun to watch, and I want to see him catch the ball a little bit more out of the backfield there for the Rams. I think that's really what you're going to see him have to do. Although he's a guy who's going to be able to take some pressure off of Gurley as well there for the Rams. Now here's the guy that I've been pounding the table for, and a guy who I'm a huge fan of, and that's Iowa State's David Montgomery, a guy who I was talking about throughout my podcast last season. Went to the Bears. Round number 3, pick number 9, just 3 picks after Darrell Henderson. And the thing with David Montgomery was all the missed tackles. His lateral quickness, his ability, the jump cuts, just making guys miss, powerful lower body. Doesn't have blazing speed, but a guy who can make you miss. And the lateral quickness, he's able to make multiple guys miss with one lateral cut. It's really fun to watch. Excellent hands out of the backfield. Chicago Bears are going to love having him. Now, Justice Hill there at Oklahoma State, round 4, pick number 11, went to the Baltimore Ravens. Now, the Ravens already have 3 guys in their backfield, and so that's something that, you have Mark Ingram, you have Gus Edwards, and you're stacking a lot of running backs there, but they're all the same guy. Justice Hill is a guy who's going to be a burner, really that change of pace. And I think that Baltimore, when you have a lot of those power running backs, you need to have a guy who's going to catch the ball out of the backfield and a guy who can be dynamic. And I think Justice Hill can be that guy for the Ravens. And then a guy who I thought, just really didn't get a whole lot of respect was Travion Williams out of Texas A&M. 6th round pick of the Bengals. And look, I think he's going to ultimately replace Gio Bernard as the backup for Joe Mixon when it's all said and done. Gio's still there. I just don't know if Gio can stay healthy. I think Travion Williams showed that he can be a burner, one of the best running backs in terms of statistics in the country a season ago, and a guy who... he was one of my favorite guys to watch because it always seemed like he'd get to the perimeter, always followed Eric McCoy, the center, coming around edge, and a guy who could just make plays. Which leads us to the wide receiver position. And I've got, quite a few guys on here, but these were guys that if you listen to my podcast, guys that I talked about, religiously. N'Keal Harry out of Arizona State, last pick in the 1st round, going to the New England Patriots, big-bodied guy, that Odell Beckham style catch against USC in the Coliseum, a beast on the outside. I really want to see what he can do with Tom Brady. Deebo Samuel, South Carolina, completely healthy, big not the biggest guy, but when I say big, he's very thick, thickly built, and a guy who can be physical. Also has the burst. The suddenness is just awesome to watch. He's so quick in and out of his breaks. I think he's quicker than he is fast. Second round pick, fourth pick in the second round to the 49ers. He could end up being Jimmy Garoppolo's go-to guy when it's all said and done. He and Dante Pettis will be fun to watch on the outside there. A.J. Brown of Mississippi, second round pick, 19th overall in the second round, going to the Tennessee Titans. They already have Corey Davis there for the Titans. And I think A.J. Brown is the guy who's going to be that slot receiver, be a weapon there for Marcus Mariota and Ryan Tannehill for that matter. Whoever's going to end up being quarterback for the Titans as the season goes on. J.J. Arcega-Whiteside of Stanford, yet another second rounder, pick number 25, going to the Eagles. They have Alshon Jeffrey, they have Deshaun Jackson, but I think J.J. Arcega-Whiteside's a guy who can also carve a niche. He's more than just a 50-50 guy and a red zone nightmare. He has some burst. He can be a vertical threat, but I think he'll take some pressure off of Alshon Jeffrey, and you have Nelson Aguilar there as well. You have some really good receivers. You also have two top tight ends. Obviously, Zach Ertz, over 100 catches and 1,000 yards, and then Dallas Goedert as another weapon. But J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, the cupboard is not bare at all for Carson Wentz. He's loaded with skill position receivers. Arcega-Whiteside is just going to be another guy fighting for the football. Andy Isabella going to Arizona. Another second round pick, pick number 30, out of UMass, ran a 4.31 40, a guy who in high school actually beat Denzel Ward in the 100 meters. He's someone who I think is going to end up being a guy, can play in the slot, going to be a burner vertically as well for Kyler Murray. If Kyler Murray can get things going, if that offensive line can get going, Andy Isabella is going to be someone that he's going to be looking to early and often. Terry McLaurin out of Ohio State, third round pick number 12, going to Washington. And the Washington Redskins right now, they have Josh Doxson, they have Paul Richardson, they have quite a few receivers there, but I think Terry McLaurin is the guy. He battled some injuries in preseason, but someone who I think his route running ability, he's very sudden in and out of his breaks. He's just a technician, and I think because of that, his consistency there as a route runner could end up surprising some people there for the Redskins. If you're a fantasy football player, and you've got a team, Terry McLaurin, somebody to keep an eye on there in free agency as the season progresses. Miles Boykin, Baltimore Ravens. Ravens needed receivers. They pick up Boykin in the third round after taking Marquise Brown in round number 1. Took him in round number 3 of the 29th pick, out of Notre Dame, a guy who really surprised everyone with his 4.4 speed and his ability to get in and out of his breaks, a guy who can get down the field, big-bodied receiver, does a really good job shielding defenders away from the ball, extends for the football, goes back to it, and a guy who can be a weapon on the sideline, in the red zone, outside the numbers, can be coming over the middle. He's one of the more underrated receivers in this draft. Hakeem Butler out of Iowa State. This was one of my favorite players to watch because of his physicality on the outside, just throwing guys down, catching the ball with his left arm, throwing Hassan Defense of Kansas down with his right. Just so much fun to watch. Was the first pick of the 4th round, day number 3, to the Arizona Cardinals, but he broke his hand and he's out for the year. Really bummed about that he's on IR, but a name to watch out for in the 2020 NFL season. I'm going to be looking forward to seeing what Hakeem Butler can do there for Kyler Murray and company. And then my undrafted free agent, I always have a receiver as an undrafted free agent that I have in there. Alan Lazard was my guy last year for the Green Bay Packers, who actually is having a pretty good preseason. Keelan Doss of UC Davis, another guy who is having a pretty good preseason for the Oakland Raiders. This is a guy, if you watched him play, especially against Stanford, had over 100 yards receiving, and just a guy who just seemed to always get open over the middle. Not always going to be a guy who's going to beat you outside the numbers, but man, he can work the middle of the field. Very sudden, knows how to get open across the middle. And if you watch the preseason games, he's a guy who just attacks the middle of the field, knows how to do that. And I think the thing that I really enjoyed about Keelan Doss, not only did he graduate from my brother's alma mater, UC Davis. But what he did with the Aggies, he could have gone anywhere as a grad transfer. He could have gone to a Power 5 conference and really stood out. He decided to stay there for the Aggies and really cement his legacy, and took the Aggies to their first FCS playoff berth. Mad respect for Keelan Dawson. I think he's going to make the roster there in Oakland, and he and Hunter Renfrow are going to be those possession guys who are going to end up being Derek Carr's favorite target. Tight ends, Jay Sternberger of Texas A&M went to the Packers, 3rd round pick. I like this pick. Packers needed a tight end. Jay Sternberger, I think, can develop some chemistry there with Aaron Rodgers. Kahale Warring of San Diego State going to the Houston Texans in the 3rd round. Houston needed another tight end, ever since CJ Fedorowicz called it quits. Kahale Warring is a guy who is an ascending player. And then Dawson Knox of Mississippi, another 3rd round tight end, taken by the Buffalo Bills, last pick in the 3rd round. I'm sorry, pick number 32. I think there were a few compensatory picks after that. But Dawson Knox, really athletic tight end, could be a weapon there for Josh Allen. Offensive tackles. How about Jonah Williams of Bama? He might end up kicking inside to guard, but I firmly believe he can be a left tackle there for the Bengals. The 11th overall pick. I love the pick up by the Bengals. This is going to be a guy who's going to have, he's going to be protecting Andy Dalton and Zach Taylor. Look, if you talk to quarterbacks, do you want to take a top-notch receiver or a top-notch offensive tackle in round number 1? They're going to say a tackle all day long, protecting him, and Jonah Williams is going to be that guy there in Cincinnati. Dalton Reisner, Kansas State, going to the Denver Broncos, pick number 9 in round number 2. A guy who can play both tackle and guard. I thought just a model of consistency. I think he's someone who can be a starter there in Denver for a long time. And then how about Max Sharping in Northern Illinois? 2nd round pick, 23rd pick in the 2nd round, going to the Houston Texans out of Northern Illinois. And look, Max Sharping, I kept talking about this guy. Just 3 pressures given up, 1 sack, and that was to A.J. Epinesa in the first game there for the Huskies. A veteran there, just a technician, not the best athlete, but he's playing right tackle. I think that's where his home was going to be, whether it's right tackle or kicking inside to guard. But I'm going to be, I'm cautiously optimistic for Deshaun Watson having him. Yes, you have a rookie that's starting at tackle, but keep an eye on Max Sharping. He may surprise and be one of those breakout tackles. Offensive guards, Chris Lindstrom out of Boston College. Falcons took him with the 14th overall pick. This guy is mean. He's nasty. He's very athletic as well. Not quite on the level of Quentin Nelson, but he's not too far off. So he's somebody who I think can really bring some physicality there for the Falcons and bring some athleticism up front as well. Phil Haynes, Wake Forest, Seattle took him in the 4th round. Really a physical guard on the inside, very powerful guy, and someone who I think could end up starting sooner rather than later there for Seattle. And then Wes Martin of Indiana. Washington Redskins took him in the 4th round. I had him in my top 10 among the guards for a while. I thought some of his play dropped off a little bit there towards the end of the season, but he's a guy, when he's on, there weren't too many guys in the Big Ten that were better at the guard position. Centers, Garrett Bradbury out of NC State. I mean, look, he was a model of consistency for the Wolfpack. Going to Carolina. Carolina lost Ryan Khalil, ultimately decided to come out of retirement to play for the Jets, but Carolina moving on, they get their center, they get a guy in Garrett Bradbury who's going to be the man there in the middle for a long time. 18th pick in round number 1, and then Eric McCoy, who I mentioned earlier, out of Texas A&M, going to the Saints, pick number 16 in round number 2, battling Nick Easton for the right to replace Max Unger at the center position. Very athletic, a guy who always seemed to be the lead blocker out in front of Travion Williams. Very fun to watch. Pretty strong as well. Very adept in pass protection as well. Eric McCoy, someone to watch there up front for the Saints. Now, if we flip to the defensive side of the ball, and if you recall, this was a defense-heavy draft. So, defensive line, I've got a lot of guys, taken in the first 2 days in my group here at the defensive end position. Cleveland Ferrell out of Clemson, I had him actually going number 4 to the Raiders in my very first mock draft. I changed it, had him going to the Raiders later on in round number 1, so I guess I kind of get half credit for that, right? But he went number 4 overall, a guy who wasn't the most explosive guy, but someone who always seemed to be wreaking havoc, getting to the quarterback. When he learns a little bit more from Brentson Buckner and so in terms of some of the nuances of the position, can be a guy who can really wreak havoc, use those long arms to his advantage to set the run, set the edge against the run as well. Montez Sweat out of Mississippi State, as long as everything checks out with that heart, that ticker, I think he could end up being a steal, falling all the way to number 26, in round number 1 to the Redskins. I'd like to see him ultimately be a running mate there for Ryan Kerrigan. Chase Winovich of Michigan going to the Patriots. This is a Patriot type of guy, round 3. And look, when you turned on the film, you wanted to watch Devin Bush, you wanted to watch Rashawn Gary. Who was the guy that kept flashing? The guy with the blonde locks just flowing out of the back of the helmet. Chase Winovich flying all over the place. A guy who had surprising burst, very athletic, had 4.6 speed. Who knew? But a guy who just always working to the quarterback, really a guy who can be a blue collar type player and a guy who fits well for the Patriots. Jalen Ferguson, the sack daddy, broke Terrell Suggs' record there at Louisiana Tech, going to the Ravens, 3rd round pick. Someone who I think is going to do a good job getting to the quarterback. More of a situational guy, as will O'Shane Ximines, a 3rd round pick from Old Dominion, going to the Giants, a guy who I think is going to continue to get better, just bending off the edge. And then Max Crosby out of Eastern Michigan, a 4th round pick of the Raiders, a guy who came out a year early. I was kind of surprised that he did that, but someone who just knows how to get to the quarterback. Very quick burst off the edge, another high motor guy, just high energy, always seems to be working to the quarterback. And, he broke his hand in the preseason, so I'm not sure how long he's going to be out, but he's someone who's definitely going to be able to provide some depth there for the Raiders. D tackles, you have to start with Quinnen Williams, right, out of Alabama. 18.5 tackles for loss, a guy who just wreaked havoc in his only season, of starting experience for Bama. Went number 3 overall to the Jets. Ed Oliver of Houston going to the Bills, number 9 overall. Look, when you talk Ed Oliver, he does a little bit of everything. And up there, he's a guy who I think is going to be a really solid 3 technique. He's just so quick off the ball. People are worried that maybe he's undersized, but look, he's not Aaron Donald, but Aaron Donald was able to get it done. Ed Oliver not as strong as Aaron Donald, but when you watch the footwork of Aaron Donald and you compare that to Ed Oliver, there are some similarities. Christian Wilkins of Clemson going to Miami, 13 overall. Very intelligent player, a guy who just seemed to be consistent, can play all over the line. A guy who I think can make plays there for Miami, be a starter early on in his career, as will Kalen Saunders out of Western Illinois. 3rd round pick going to the Chiefs. I want to see what he can do there. Is he going to be a nose tackle for them? Is he going to be a five technique? Surprising quickness off the ball. Dalen Mack out of Texas A&M, kind of that fire plug in the middle. Baltimore Ravens took him in round number 5, a guy who just was unblockable, just driving guys into the backfield, especially in the all-star games going up against some of the top talent, and really showed off his strength. And then Cortez Broughton wasn't even invited to the combine. Chargers took him in round number 7. Chargers getting some luck there, hitting some home runs with some guys there on the interior of the line. And I think Cortez Broughton is going to be another guy who is going to surprise people. Linebacker position, obviously you have to start with Devin White, going to be the signal caller there for the Bucks. 5th pick overall out of LSU. What can you say about Devin White? He's new to the position, still 100 back-to-back 120 plus tackle seasons. A guy who's just going to continue to get better and better. We've seen, we haven't seen the best football from him yet, and that's a scary, scary thought. Jermaine Prada of NC State. This is going to be a run of a lot of guys, who are athletic, 3 down linebackers. Jermaine Pratt was a converted safety there at NC State when he played linebacker, over 100 tackles, going in the third round to the Bengals. How about Bobby Okereke of Stanford, a third-round pick of the Colts? Really long arms, very good athlete, just a very intelligent player. Drew Tranquil out of Notre Dame, fourth-round pick of the Chargers. Converted safety, and a guy who just seems to make plays all over the field. Can play the run, can play the pass, can get after the quarterback a little bit. Really fun to watch, and I think he's having a pretty good preseason as well. As is Mac Wilson, out of Alabama. Went to Cleveland in the fifth round, and a guy who I think he's really at his best in coverage. I think it showed so far in the preseason. Had a leaping interception. Justin Hollins of Oregon, a guy who's getting a lot of playing time for the Denver Broncos, a fifth-round pick. 240 pounds, 6'5", and a guy who can do a little bit of everything, just like the guys that we've talked about. A guy who can be a three-down linebacker, can get after the quarterback. Very productive there for the Oregon Ducks, and I think he's going to be a starter there for the Broncos. Ulysses Gilbert out of Akron. The Steelers took him in round number 6 when he was there with the Zips. One year he was over 100 tackles. The next year he was a guy who was basically playing in the slot as basically a nickel defender. So athletic. I think he's somebody who is going to be a better than where he was drafted because of his ability to play a multitude of positions. And then Daryl Johnson out of North Carolina A&T, seventh round pick of the Patriots. I was kind of surprised that he came out. He's a little undersized. Needed to put on some weight, but the Patriots like some of those guys, coming off the edge. Derek Roberson was another guy that they picked up. He's coming back. After a tremendous career at Sam Houston State. They like some of those guys, from some of those small schools. Daryl Johnson, another guy that's going to fit that mold. And so those are some guys to keep an eye on there at the linebacker position. Moving on to the corners, Joanne Williams out of Vanderbilt, a big corner, 6'4", just excellent length. Guess what? Patriots went with him there in round number 2. He has a chance to start early on, as does Justin Lane out of Michigan State. The Steelers needed a cornerback, needed a guy to make some plays. Justin Lane, a converted wide receiver, understands routes. Route recognition is key for him. Excellent ball skills. Went in round number 3 to the Steelers. And then how about Jimmy Moreland out of James Madison? 18 interceptions in this guy's career. I want to say 61 pass breakups, a nose for the football. One of my favorite players, period. Redskins, I think, found a gem in round number 7. Pick number 13 in round number 7. Remember that name, Jimmy Moreland, there for the Washington Redskins. And then finally, the safety position. How can you have to start with Jonathan Abram of Mississippi State. A ball hawk, a guy who is a big physical hitter, a guy who likes to talk out on the football field, taken 27th overall by the Raiders. Juan Thornhill of Virginia, a guy who could play both corner and safety. Very versatile there for the Chiefs. That's why they took him in round number 2. Mike Edwards of Kentucky, a guy who I thought was a little underrated. People weren't really talking about him. Buccaneers took him at the end of day number 2. And then Chauncey Gardner-Johnson of Florida. The Saints get him in the 4th round. I thought that was a steal. Really wondering why teams weren't taking him much sooner, because I think he's a guy who can play in multiple positions in the secondary and multiple scenarios as well. So that is the second annual All Schutze Team for 2019, which leads us into the matchups for week number 1. So taking a look at what we have week number 1, starting with Thursday's games, August 29th, UCLA traveling to Nippert Stadium there in Cincinnati. I want to see Michael Warren the third, really a powerful back, a guy who I think is someone that people are sleeping on. The truck is a guy who he runs people over. He was a guy who really kind of surprised people with what he did against UCLA. 5'11", 218 pounds, over 1,300 yards on the ground, 19 touchdowns, 25 receptions as well. So he can catch the football out of the backfield. Only a junior, but I really want to see what he can do. As the same goes for Joshua Kelly out of UCLA, a guy who came in as a transfer And 5'11", 204 pounds, over 1,200 yards on the ground, 12 touchdowns, 27 receptions. It's going to be the battle of the running backs. And the other guy to watch there for Cincinnati is going to be the tight end, Josiah DeGuara, the leading receiver there for Cincinnati, and a guy who I think is a legit pro prospect. If you don't have him in your top 10 among tight ends, I don't know what you're doing. Right now I looked at my top 10 though, and I don't have him there, and I'm scratching my head wondering why. A guy who was among the top tight end, returning tight ends from a season ago, and let's see if I can pull his stats up here. Just a guy, sure-handed receiver, and he's going to the same college as Travis Kelce. Not quite the athlete, not as big as him, 6'3", 240 pounds. But look, he can catch the football. 38 catches, 468 yards, 5 touchdowns. He's going to be someone to watch there for the Bearcats. They have Brian Wright, the linebacker. Kobe Bryant, not the basketball player. He spells his name Coby, but Kobe Bryant has some skills on the outside, can be a good cover corner there for the Bearcats. 9 pass breakups a season ago to go along with 2 interceptions, and he'll be going up against Theo Howard. He's the top returner there for the UCLA Bruins. UCLA. They're going to have Dorian Thompson-Robinson there at quarterback. Bring in 3 returners there up front on the offensive line. I think Darnay Holmes and Quentin Lake, that's the son of Carnell Lake there in the secondary, are the other guys to really keep an eye on. Darnay Holmes is only a junior, 5'10", 199 pounds, 11 pass breakups in his career, 6 interceptions, 3 in each of the past 2 seasons, and has returned 1 back for touchdown in each of the last 2 seasons as well. So he'll be someone to keep an eye on as well. So that's going to be one of the marquee matchups there on Thursday. As we go through this, you have UCF taking on Florida A&M. That'll be a game that I'll be watching. I really want to see what Brandon Wimbush can do there for UCF, ranked number 17 in the country. Clemson taking on Georgia Tech, the Ramblin' Wreck. FIU is taking on Tulane. And you're probably wondering, why in the world am I even bringing up that game? Florida International, this is 2 group of 5 teams. People really probably don't know much about. But Florida International, I really want to see what James Morgan, the quarterback, can do. What can he bring to the table? He's really the guy that I'm going to be watching there for the Panthers. And James Morgan, 6'4", 213 pounds. He transferred from Bowling Green and a season ago in his first year there at FIU. 65% completion percentage, over 2,700 yards, 26 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. He'll be a guy to watch there, again, for FIU. But then you're also talking about, if you look at Tulane, you've got Darius Bradwell. Darius Bradwell, if you're not familiar with him, 6'1", 230 pounds, a big, powerful back. Had just 200 carries, still went over 1,000 yards, 1,134 to be exact, and 11 scores. I'd like to see him be more of a weapon out of the backfield this year, but definitely a guy who can be a powerful back between the tackles. That'll be a fun matchup to watch. Really an underrated matchup, if you ask me. Texas A&M taking on Texas State. That'll be Kellen Mond. Really, can he take that next step there under Jimbo Fisher? A lot of people think he can. Jake Spavital getting the chance to start things over there with the Bobcats. And Bobcats have a legit linebacker on their team, and his name is Brian London. So if you haven't gotten to see him yet, that's a guy that you really want to tune in for. 6'2", 232 pounds, had 142 tackles as a freshman, 91 tackles, and then in his junior season, 109 tackles, 5.5 tackles for loss, has 19.5 total tackles for loss in his career, 11 pass breakups. Someone to keep an eye on. Really want to see what he can do against Kellen Mond there for Texas State. Now, Texas State, not going to be much of a they're not going to put up much of a fight against the Aggies, but I really want to see what that matchup looks like. Same thing with Minnesota and South Dakota State. Really want to see what Christian Roseboom can do there for the Jackrabbits there at linebacker. I think that'll be intriguing if nothing else. And then you've got Utah taking on BYU at Lavelle Edwards Stadium in Provo, Utah. The 14th ranked Utes, if you were tuning in to game day there on ESPN, he's picking Utah to go to the national championship game. I don't know if I go that far, but you have, Tyler Huntley at quarterback, and then Zach Moss. Zach Moss is a guy who's battled injuries, and had it not been for the injuries, Zach Moss really could have had, possibly could have entered the draft last season. 5'10", 222 pounds, back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons, played in only 9 games last year, still went over the 1,000-yard mark, 23 touchdowns to his name, and had 29 receptions in 2017, only 8 a season ago, but a guy who is really going to be the bell cow and really going to be relied upon. Darren Paulo, the left tackle, is going to be the guy to watch up front offensively. Britton Covey is a possession receiver nightmare there for the Utes. And then on the defensive side of the ball, you've got Bradley Anai, who I think is one of the better pass rushers coming off the edge in all of college football. I've got him ranked in my top 10. Bradley Anai, 26 tackles for loss, 16 sacks in his career, had at least 7 sacks in each of his last 2 seasons there at Utah. A couple of guys on the interior. John Pennicini is a guy that nobody's talking about, but a guy who I think can make an impact there on the inside. And then Leki Fotu. Leki Fotu is one of the, you talk about some of these big defensive tackles there at Utah. Guys like Starlo Tulele and Leki Fotu is the same type of player. 6'5", 330 pounds. Last season, had 7 tackles for loss, 3.5 sacks, showed an ability to both play the run and the pass there along the interior. So he'll be a guy to watch, as will Jalen Johnson, the corner on the outside for the Utes. Look, Utah has some players. They have some athletes, have some skill position guys. 6 foot, 190 pounds out there, 5 interceptions, 10 pass breakups in 2 seasons with the Utes. He's only a junior, but a guy who I think if he has another big season could come out. And then as a safety, Julian Blackman played corner for them, 6'1", 195 pounds. Julian Blackman moving to safety now, 5 interceptions and 16 pass breakups, including 10 a season ago. He'll be a guy to watch there as well on the back end of that defense. Now with BYU, Kalani Sitake, it's going to be an interesting game for them. They've got a lot, given up a lot in terms of the athleticism. But when you talk BYU, what are you really dealing with there? Or really what you're going to be looking for? Aleva Hifo is probably their best receiver. They're returning 3 offensive linemen up front. Matt Bushman, the tight end, is transferred to Pitt. Zach Wilson is a sophomore quarterback. So really a lot of young guys up front. Probably the best senior player might be Trajan Peely up front for the at defensive end. Chris Wilcox, the corner, is returning from injury. This is going to be an interesting season for BYU. I really don't know what to expect. They were 7-6 a season ago. I'm expecting them to probably be right around 6-7 wins as well. I think Utah ultimately is going to roll in this one. But you know what? With that rivalry, you never know what's going to happen. If you move on to Friday, Rice and Army is the first game that kicks off. And that's 5 o'clock Central. And the reason why I'm bringing this game up is Elijah Riley is a legit if I could say that right, legit pro prospect there for Army at the cornerback position. I don't know how often Rice, and Mike Bloomgren are going to be throwing the football, but Elijah Riley, 6 foot, 205. 15 pass breakups, 4 interceptions, also 9.5 tackles for loss, including 7.5 a season ago. So he's a guy who I think can make plays on the outside. The other guy is going to be Cole Christensen, the linebacker for them. And Cole Christensen he's 6'2", 225 pounds, 163 tackles in his career, 17 for loss. Just really one of those smart, intelligent guys there for Army. So those are going to be the guys, if you're going to tune into that game, those are going to be guys to watch. Michigan State has Tulsa traveling there, and you'll get to see Kenny Willekes and wreak havoc coming off the edge. You'll have Joe Bocci, the middle linebacker, and then you'll have Raekwon Williams stuffing the middle of that of the line, and then David Dowell patrolling the secondary at the safety position. So Michigan State, I think they're going to roll. Brian Lewerke, they said that big reason why a lot of his play got benched in favor of Rocky Lombardi a season ago was because of injury. Really a time for him to shine. You've got a couple of offensive linemen up front who are going to be pro prospects. Cole Schutze is the left tackle. He's someone who I think is going to get a look by several teams. He's on the Senior Bowl watch list. And then Tyler Higbee, 6'5", 300 pounds, guy who's played multiple positions there for Michigan State. He's going to be someone to keep an eye on. Cole Schutze, 6'8", 300 pounds, big guy there at left tackle. So those are going to be guys that I'm going to be keeping an eye on for Michigan State. Should have an easy time with Tulsa. But Tulsa, look, the one thing that I will say about Tulsa is they've got some pretty solid linebackers. That's really what I want to see is how can they, what can they do against Brian Lewerke? Is Brian Lewerke just going to have a field day and do whatever he wants? Or are these linebackers going to step up and make some plays? Cooper Edmiston, 113 tackles a season ago, also had 4 interceptions. Freshman All-American Zaven Collins is 6'4", 256 pounds, 85 tackles, 9.5 went for loss. And then Diamond Cannon, 6'2", 230 pounds. He's a senior, 52 tackles a season ago, had a breakout junior season last year. Now, look, I'm not saying that this team is going to have any chance against Michigan State, but I think some of those linebackers, that's going to be the matchup that I want to see. Can these guys make some plays there against the Spartans? I think if they do, that's going to help them in terms of their draft stock. And I think Zaven Collins, he's going to be a guy a lot of people are going to be talking about when it's all said and done, when his time is done there for the Golden Hurricane. Wisconsin traveling to Tampa, Raymond James Stadium, taking on USF. You've got that hurricane that's going to be rolling in, so I don't know if it's going to hit land there on Friday or not. But if this game does happen, you're going to have Blake Barnett. Really, if he wants to be a pro prospect, he's going to have to show up in this game and really perform against Wisconsin. And Wisconsin, their defense can be susceptible to I think a big game potentially from Blake Barnett and Jordan Cronkrite, the running back from Florida. Zach Bond, the linebacker, 6'3", 225 pounds, tough as nails there at linebacker. Isaiah Loudermilk, the junior, finally healthy and a guy who is going to be a full-time starter, 6'7", 307 pounds. You got Scott Nelson, the safety, 6'2", 197 pounds, playing free safety, had an excellent freshman season, but a lot of inexperience defensively there for Wisconsin. And that's something that if I'm a Badger fan, I have to worry about that just a little bit. What is my defense really going to look like? What's that identity going to be like defensively? A season ago, you at least, if nothing else, had TJ Edwards patrolling the middle of the field, and you don't have that anymore. So you have Blake Barnett, Jordan Cronkrite carrying the football, Mitchell Wilcox, the tight end, is going to be a weapon out there as well, 6'5", 245 pounds. And then obviously when Wisconsin has the ball, you've got, the Doak Walker Award winner from a season ago, Jonathan Taylor, over 2,000 yards, 5'11", 219-pound junior. Fun to watch, and he's got a line, Cole Van Lanen, Tyler Beatis, there at, experienced on the line. Jason Erdman and Caden Lyles at the guard positions have gotten some experience, but you're having to replace guys like Bo Benshaw. You're going to have to replace guys like David Edwards and Michael Dieter, guys that have been mainstays on that line for a long time. But look, Tyler Biotis is going to be a top 20 pick. 6'3", 318 pounds. Watch the way that he pulls and gets out in front of Jonathan Taylor, a guy who can climb to the next level. Really want to see he can dominate in the running game. I want to see what he can do in the passing game. Can he be consistent in that passing game? When you look at guys like Garrett Bradbury, guys who were taken as in the top 20, if you want to be that guy, you have to be exceptional in pass protection as well. So Jack Cohn is going to be the quarterback. He's going to have to watch out for the likes of Mike Hampton. 6'1", 180 pounds. Mike Hampton was a breakout performer a season ago. And Hampton, 6'1", 190, like I said. 16 pass breakups and 2 interceptions. Excellent ball skills on the outside. He's going to be the guy that you really want to keep an eye on. But Jonathan Taylor is really going to be the guy. And at the end of the day, Wisconsin, look, that defense just needs to get a couple of stops against Blake Barnett. Let Jonathan Taylor just go crazy. He was 6th in the Heisman voting as a true freshman, 9th in the voting in 2018. Over 1,900 yards as a true freshman. Followed that up with just under 2,200 yards as a sophomore, 7.1 yards per carry, 16 touchdowns, 29 total in his career, over 4,000 yards in just 2 seasons. Obliterating some records in his first 2 years. Needs to be more of a receiver, though. That's the one thing that I will say. 16 receptions. Look, Melvin Gordon was not a receiver at Wisconsin, yet he was still taken number 18 overall by the Chargers. So I would like to see him, though, be more of a weapon there in the passing game. I think the biggest thing that I was surprised when it comes to Wisconsin, and it may just be because you've got the veteran presence in there more than anything else, is that the freshman there at Wisconsin wasn't named the starter. That ultimately was Jack Cohn, but that's something that you're going to have to watch out for. Can the name of the freshman escapes me? Graham Mertz. Before long, remember that name. He's a guy who I think if Jack Cohn struggles, we could end up seeing Graham Mertz and the start of the Graham Mertz era, really taking off. So let's see, who else do we have? Utah State. Obviously you have Jordan Love. You have on offense. You also have David Woodward on defense and Tipa Naliai coming off the edge. Those are going to be the guys to really keep an eye on. And they get a chance. They get to go in against Wake Forest. I want to see what Jordan Love can do against the likes of Isang Bassi there at the cornerback position. But if Utah State wants to be a team to challenge there as a group of 5 team, making a statement against an ACC foe is going to be a good step towards that. Colorado, Steven Montez and Laviska Shenault taking on Colorado State. Let's see. Saturday, August 31st, Ohio State Buckeyes, Ryan Day. They're taking on Lane Kiffin's Florida Atlantic Owls. No more Devin Singletary. I think this will probably end up being a rout there for Ohio State. Keep an eye on Chase Young. Nick Bosa, before he went down to his injury, really got off to a fast start, and that's really kind of what set the tone for his season. 4 tackles for loss, 3 sacks in just 3 games. Really want to see if Chase Young can get off to a great start. Jeffrey Okudah on the outside, going to make some plays there at the corner position. What a difference a year makes, too. You have Iowa State taking on Northern Illinois, ranked number 21 in the country, and then Nebraska. Scott Frost and company, ranked number 24 in the country, taking on South Alabama. That's going to be a game 2 games I want to tune into and really watch, see what Brock Purdy can do there for Iowa State. They've got a lot of guys on the defensive side of the football that I'm curious in. Really want to see what they can do. Can they step up? Obviously, Greg Eisworth, the junior safety, is one to watch. I've neglected to put him into my top 25. I'm sorry, into my top 10 there at the safety position, but a guy who I'm going to be moving back in there relatively quickly. The sophomore middle linebacker Mike Rose will be a guy to talk about in next year's draft. But Marcel Spears, 6'1", 215-pound, undersized linebacker, but a guy who can really play well in space. Obviously, Jaquan Bailey coming off the edge, 6'2", 251 pounds. Jaquan Bailey was a guy who consistently got to the quarterback in Big 12 play. And a guy, not the biggest guy, but a guy who can bend pretty well. 18 sacks, 31 tackles for loss in his career, 9 pass breakups, knows what to do coming off the edge. And then Ray Lima, the big guy in the middle. Really want to see offensive lines, also a veteran line. Julian Good-Jones at left tackle, 6'5", 296, and then Josh Knipfel, the right guard, 6'5", 309. Bryce Meeker, the right tackle, 6'6", 309. All guys who could potentially be pro prospects coming back there for Iowa State. And then at Nebraska, there's room, reason for optimism, and a big piece of that is the quarterback position. Really, Adrian Martinez, only a sophomore, 6'2", 220 pounds. Definitely fun to watch. You're going to have, J.D. Spielman, an underrated junior there working out of the slot. The Davis brothers, Carlos and Khalil there at along the defensive line. Mohamed Berry, an inside linebacker nobody's really talking about, 6'1", and 230 pounds. And let's see, last season, first real action there for the Cornhuskers, over 100 tackles, 112 to be exact, 10 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, a guy who's looking to build upon that. And then Lamar Jackson and DiCaprio Boodle. Lamar Jackson is one of the bigger corners. I think that's one of the things that kind of stands out. 6'3", 215 pounds, 2 interceptions, 10 pass breakups in his career. And then with DiCaprio Boodle, one of the best names in all of college football. 5'10", 195, 15 pass breakups a season ago to go with 39 tackles. No picks yet in his career. Really want to see him make some plays there on the edge. Maybe he'll be able to do that for Nebraska as they square off against South Alabama. So as we move through the schedule, Mississippi, the running back, they're taking on Memphis at Memphis in the Liberty Bowl. Going to see Scotty Phillips take on Patrick Taylor. There's no more Tony Pollard or Darrell Henderson there running the football in Mike Norvell's offense. So Patrick Taylor is really going to be the guy. And Memphis, they really had a 3-headed monster at the running back position, and I thought it was kind of fun to watch. Patrick Taylor was the bigger guy, 6'3", 227, over 200 carries, still 1,122 yards, 16 touchdowns, also has 47 receptions in his career. Keep an eye on him. He may be one of those guys like Tony Pollard that kind of sneaks in as an early day 3 pick. And then for Scotty Phillips, he's one of those undersized running backs, but a guy who I think is going to be fun to watch. 5'8", 211, a season ago, over 900 yards on the ground, 10 catches, scored 12 total touchdowns, 10 on the ground, 2 in the air. So I think that'll be the key matchup there for Mississippi. Now, Mississippi State, they're breaking in a new quarterback with Nick Fitzgerald gone. It's going to be the former Penn State Nittany Lion, Tommy Stevens. And Mississippi State, they're going to have to replace, obviously, the likes of Jeffrey Simmons. They're also going to have to replace Montez Sweat up front. Chauncey Rivers is going to be a guy to keep an eye out for. 6'3", 275 pounds. People aren't really talking about Chauncey. And, I think he needs to be on people's radars. He transferred from Georgia. And in 2018, in a limited role, 7.5 tackles for loss, 3 sacks in 12 games. He's someone to keep an eye out for. Errol Thompson is a junior linebacker, but a guy who is on a lot of teams' radars already. 6'1", 250 pounds, big kid, 87 tackles, 10 tackles for loss, 4 sacks, 2 interceptions at the inside linebacker position. He's going to be someone to keep an eye on, as will Cameron Dantzler. I mentioned him, in the second podcast when we're talking about defense and the defensive side of the ball, Cameron Dantzler, 6'2", 185. Terrell Buckley is the secondary coach or DB coach there for the Bulldogs. He's talking about him as the best corner in the SEC, and that's with the likes of C.J. Henderson, Christian Fulton. So that's high praise. 12 pass breakups in his career, kind of an slight corner there, and that's the one concern that you have is a guy who could potentially get pushed around. They're going up against Louisiana. The big reason why I'm kind of bringing this game up is Louisiana has some running backs that are fun to watch. They have Raymond Calais. Raymond Calais, he's 5'9", 180 pounds, really kind of that jitterbug type of guy, 754 yards on the ground, 7 touchdowns. And then the guy that I really have a lot of fun watching, he's only a junior. He'll probably be back, 5'11", 227-pound Trey Regis. Nearly 2,000 yards in his career there for the Raging Cajuns, over 1,100 yards a season ago to go along with 25 receptions. He's a name to keep an eye out for. And then if you're looking for a receiver for the Raging Cajuns, how about Jamarcus Bradley? Jamarcus Bradley is, let's see, he's 6'1", 195 pounds, and had 100 receptions in his career, including really a breakout 2018, 40 receptions, 608 yards. That's 15.2 yards per reception and 10 touchdowns. He's going to be somebody to really keep an eye out for Billy Napier and Louisiana. Really going to, be a good test for him going up against Cam Dantzler. You have to figure that they're going to be going up against each other quite a bit. West Virginia is taking on James Madison in Morgantown. Rashad Robinson coming back from injury there, the corner. He'll get to match up quite a bit with Marcus Sims. And, Gary Jennings is gone, and so is David Sills. So Marcus Sims is going to be the guy that's going to be relied upon to make a lot of plays on the outside. 6 foot, 194 pounds, back-to-back years with at least 35 receptions and over 600 yards. But I expect him to be the go-to target for Austin Kendall, the transfer from Oklahoma. Let's see, what else do we have? Alabama taking on Duke. And that's really, you want to see what Alabama can do. What are you going to see from that offense? Najee Harris carrying the football. Obviously, Tua throwing the football to the bevy of receivers. Jerry Jeudy, Henry Ruggs III, Devontae Smith. Offensive line. Replacing some guys up front. Alex Leatherwood is going to be the key cog there. Is he going to play tackle? Is he going to play guard? That's going to be interesting to see. And then up front defensively, with Dylan Moses going down, that's really a big blow to them defensively. But you still have guys like Anthony Jennings, as long as he can stay healthy, coming up. He'll be a guy who can come off the edge, uses his long arms really well, had 11 pass breakups a season ago. Raekwon Davis, can he live up to the potential finally? He's somebody who I think 6'7", 305 pounds, playing defensive end in that 3-4 scheme. Really want to see him take that next step. Trevin Diggs, well on his way to being a top corner. Then he got hurt, so I want to see what he can do there for the Crimson Tide there on the outside. And then how about Xavier McKinney? Xavier McKinney kind of reminds you a little bit of Minkah Fitzpatrick. 6'1", 200 pounds, did a little bit of everything. 74 tackles, six tackles for loss, 3 sacks. So he could play in the box, can also drop back into coverage, had 2 interceptions and 10 pass breakups, returned one of those interceptions for a touchdown. So he'll be one to watch there on the back end of that secondary. But what can the middle of that defense do? You are going to have a guy by the name of DJ Dale. He's a freshman, 6'3", 314 pounds. Is he going to be the next Darren Payne? That's really going to be the big question more than anything else. Let's see, what else do we have going through there? Stanford taking on Northwestern. So you're going to see KJ Costello going up against Patty Fisher. Patty Fisher, a guy who was an All-American, as a freshman and as a sophomore. 6'4", 246 pounds, over 110 tackles in each of those seasons, 14 tackles for loss. I really want to see what he can do in coverage. Can he drop? Can he be a 3-down linebacker? That's really going to be the key. What's going to separate, whether or not he's going to be a first rounder or potential day 2 pick. KJ Costello, 6'5", 222-pound quarterback. A season ago, 65% passer, over 3,500 yards, 29 touchdowns, did have 11 interceptions on the year. He doesn't have J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, but he does have Colby Parkinson, one of the best tight ends in the country, 6'7", 240 pounds. He's breaking in some relatively new skill position guys. Bryce Love is gone, so Cameron Scarlett's going to be carrying the load at the running back position. Michael Wilson, a sophomore receiver, is going to be solid. Obviously, Walker Little at the tackle position, 6'7", 313, is going to be the pro prospect to watch, as is Paulson Adebo, 6'1", 190 pounds, the redshirt sophomore. Look, he's a guy who I think is going to challenge Bryce Love, Jeffrey Okudah, and Christian Fulton to be that number 1 corner for the 2020 drafts. Again, 6'1", 190, as a redshirt freshman. 64 tackles, 5 for loss, 4 interceptions, 17 pass breakups. Showed a tremendous ability. The ball skills obviously were there, but as a receiver, the route recognition, he ran the routes better than the receivers oftentimes. Let's see. Liberty, you're going to see a 1,000-yard receiver, Antonio Gandy Golden, and his quarterback, Buckshot Calvert, going up against the vaunted Syracuse defense. I say vaunted because they've got a couple of guys coming off the edge. If you haven't gotten to see these guys play, I would say see if you can tune in to some Syracuse games, because you got Alton Robinson, 6'4", 260 pounds, 17 tackles for loss and 10 sacks a season ago. But he's not the only guy that they have there that's going to be getting after the quarterback. They also have Kendall Coleman. So Kendall Coleman, haven't really talked about him much in the podcast yet, but he's 6'3", 253, had 10 sacks, 12 tackles for loss a season ago himself. So their line is somewhat, is a line that I think is something that teams need to be mindful of in the ACC. But I'll be curious to see if Antonio Gandy Golden can get off to a good start there. Jake Mayer and the UC Davis Aggies taking on that vaunted Cal defense. Ashton Davis, fun to watch at the safety position. Evan Weaver, the linebacker, had over 150 tackles a season ago. Let's see, as we make our way through here, Boise State and Florida State, will that game be played in Jacksonville? With the impending hurricane, it's going to be a questionable, there. But Ezra Cleveland, the offensive tackle, really want to see what he can do against ACC level talent. But he's a guy who is he's very athletic, and a guy moves so well laterally. Not the most powerful guy, more of a finesse tackle, but a guy who I think can absolutely be a force there for the Broncos. And then obviously with Florida State, you've got Cam Akers carrying the football, 5'11", 212-pound junior. Really want to see him take the next step if he wants to be one of the top-rated running backs in the country. I think Dontavius Jackson, the 6'3", 233-pound senior linebacker, is going to lead that defense for Florida State. You have Levante Taylor on the back end playing corner, can also be a safety. And then Hamza Nazaruddin, he's 6'4", 215 pounds. He's a junior, had over 90 tackles a season ago. Is he a linebacker? Is he a safety? He's one of those hybrid guys. So he'll be a guy to kind of keep an eye on. Georgia, obviously Jake Fromm and company. Going into Nashville, you want to see what Vanderbilt can do. Can the transfer from Ball State, Riley Neal, and Elijah Lipscomb, the receiver, and then Keyshawn Vaughn, who's a legitimate pro prospect there at running back. What can they do against that Georgia defense led by Kirby Smart? Oregon, taking on Auburn. That's really going to be the showcase game there at AT&T Stadium. Oregon's really going to be a fun team this year. Ranked number 11 in the country. I think they have a heck of a shot against the Auburn Tigers. Look, you get to see Justin Herbert. You'll get to see C.J. Verdell, the sophomore running back. Juwan Johnson, the transfer from Penn State. Really looking to see if he can put everything together. And then that offensive line, so dominant. Penei Sewell, the left tackle, he's back from injury. You've got Shane Lemieux, just a model of consistency up front for the Ducks, played in every game in his career. Jake Hansen hasn't given up a sack at the center position. Dallas Warmack, the transfer from Alabama, and then Calvin Throckmorton, who may be the best offensive tackle in the Pac-12. Sorry, my apologies to Walker Little, but I think Calvin Throckmorton, he's played left tackle, he's played right tackle, very efficient there at the offensive tackle position. And then on defense, you got Troy Dye, who's looking to try to lead the Ducks, in tackles in 3 straight seasons. Auburn, obviously defensively, they've got Derek Brown up front. What can you do against that vaunted, offensive line? That stacked line. You've got Nick Coe as well coming off the edge there for Auburn. I think at the end of the day, the Ducks will be too much for the Tigers. Let's see. What else do we have here? Sam Ellinger going against Louisiana Tech. We get to see Amik Robertson, the corner there for Louisiana Tech. He's going to be a guy to watch. 5'9", 183 pounds. 18 pass breakups, 9 interceptions in his career. Only a junior, but a guy who I think can actually be a weapon there and can probably cause some problems. I really want to see what he can do against the top team. And then L'Jarius Sneed, 6'1", 193 pounds, 13 pass breakups, 5 interceptions in his career as well. Those are going to be guys that Sam Ellinger is going to have to watch out for. But look, Sam Ellinger is a guy, I love the swagger, I love the moxie there for the Texas Longhorns, 6'3", 230 pounds. And look, 64% passing, over 3,200 yards, 25 touchdowns, just 5 interceptions. And then carrying the football, he nearly has 1,000 yards, has 18 touchdowns on the ground in his career as well. He's going to be throwing to a guy by the name of Colin Johnson, who's one of the best, probably the top senior receiver, one of the best in the country overall. 6'6", 260 pounds. He's recovering from arthroscopic knee surgery, but he should be taking on Louisiana Tech on Saturday. And then one last game to keep an eye on, if you can stay up at 9:30, USC taking on Fresno State in the Coliseum. Fresno State has a guy by the name of Michael Walker there at the linebacker position, a guy to keep an eye out for. Undersized guy, 6'3", 230 pounds, kind of a hybrid linebacker defensive end. 86 tackles on the year a season ago, 13.5 for loss, 4 sacks, 6 pass breakups, an interception, has really good length on the outside. The Trojans, JT Daniels won the quarterback battle there in Graham Harrell's offense. Clay Helton, the pressure's on. If they start losing some games, you can expect that he's gonna, he may lose his job by the end of the season. He's really gonna have to show up well. Michael Pittman Jr. is gonna be the top target returning for JT Daniels. 758 yards. Receiving on just 41 receptions. That's 18.5 yards per reception, a threat down the field, but they have so many skill position guys. Tyler Vaughns is a junior. He's going to be a target. And then Amon-Ra St. Brown, 6'1", 195 pounds, freshman All-American, 60 receptions, 750 yards, 3 touchdowns, high school teammate of JT Daniels at Mater Dei. Those are going to be the guys that Fresno State's going to have to watch out for. And then for USC defensively, they're pretty young overall. They lost the likes of Porter Gustin and Cameron Smith, but they do have Christian Rector up front. Now, Christian Rector, 6'4", 270 pounds, a guy that people don't really talk about, but 20 and a half tackles for loss, 12 sacks in his career, and a guy who I think is just continuing to get better and better each and every season, and really going to be curious to see what he can do in his senior year. But really a breakout candidate there in the Pac-12. Really want to see what a spread offense is going to look like there for the Trojans. Sunday, September 1st, OU, Houston. Playing at Memorial Stadium there in Norman. Jalen Hurts. What is Jalen Hurts going to be able to do for the Sooners? That's going to be the big question. Never really thought he could throw the ball that well. I thought, a lot of ducks coming out of his hand. But definitely a guy who can run the football. Going to be interesting to see what Lincoln Riley can do with him throwing the football. You're going to have Trey Sermon running out of the backfield, 6 foot, 224-pound junior, and Kennedy Brooks, really a two-headed monster there. CeeDee Lamb, going to be the number one target for Hurts, 6'2", 189-pound junior, one of the top pro prospects at the receiver position. Grant Calcaterra, excellent receiving tight end, 6'4", 221 pounds. I think he's actually bulked up to 240 now. They're replacing 4 starters on the offensive line, but one guy that's coming back could be a top 20, 25 pick, and that's Creed Humphrey, the former wrestler, high school wrestler, 6'6", 325 sophomore. When he came in the second game for Jonathan Alvarez, that offensive line really took things to the next level. And then when you bring in a new offensive or defensive coordinator like Alex Grinch, a guy who at Washington State really had one of the best defenses. You're going to see guys like Ronnie Perkins, had a great freshman season at defensive end. I think he's going to thrive, as will Neville Gallimore, who's going to be a pro prospect there on the inside, 6'2", 330 pounds. But the guy to watch will be Kenneth Murray. Kenneth Murray was a guy who made a lot of plays around the line of scrimmage, but I thought he could actually have more than the 155 tackles that he had on the season. He was a guy who I thought made some plays down the field, made those tackles because he missed the hole. He was guessing wrong, wasn't really trusting his eyes, and if he can really get all of that down, Kenneth Murray has a chance to be in consideration for the first round. But he's someone 12 and a half tackles for loss, 4.5 sacks. What is he going to do in coverage? Is he going to get lost in coverage, or is he going to be a guy who can show that he can stay on the field for 3 downs? It's really, is he going to be a guy like Shaq Quarterman who kind of gets confused and gets burned a little bit? If that's the case, then his draft stock is going to plummet. So that's something that he's going to have to watch out for sure. Houston Cougars, Dana Holgerson. I know OU and Dana, they have some of those battles. De'Aaron King is a 5'11", 195-pound senior quarterback, a guy who is just so athletic. And I think that's the thing that really jumps off more than anything else. Just under 3,000 yards a season ago, 36 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, and 686 yards on the ground. Has 25 touchdowns rushing in his career. Alex Grinch better make sure that defense is shored up, to be able to take on the likes of this offense. You have Marquez Stevenson, who's a legit speed burner on the outside, 6 foot, 190 pounds, over 1,000 yards a season ago, 9 touchdowns on the year. Keith Corbin is a 6'1", 197-pound senior as well. Josh Jones is 6'7", 310, the left tackle. He's the guy that we could be talking about as a potential pro prospect. So some things to watch there for Houston. But defensively, they have to replace. They only have 3 returning starters. So I think OU ultimately gets it done, but it's going to be closer than people think because Houston's offense is high powered unless, that's a big if Alex Grinch can get that offense going, that defense going, then watch out. The rest of the country, because OU, if they figure out that defense, they could be really scary. And then Notre Dame taking on Louisville in Cardinal Stadium on Monday, September 2nd. Look, Notre Dame, they're ranked number 9 in the country. And for good reason. You've got Ian Book, who's a very solid quarterback coming back. Only a junior, But look, he's a kid who, has an outside shot. This year, 6'1", 208. Could he potentially enter the draft? He's got a 68% completion percentage, over 2,600 yards, 19 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. I think he really needs to take his game and elevate his game to the next level. I'm looking at this. I think he may actually be he's actually a senior, so I stand corrected. So he is somebody, I think he needs to elevate his game to the next level. Jafar Armstrong running the football, needs to have a big year. Chase Claypool, Miles Boykin is gone, so Chase Claypool assumes the mantle as the top wide receiver threat, 6'4", 229-pound senior receiver, big guy. Liam Eichenberg at left tackle, 6'4", 305. We haven't talked about him much in the podcast, but a guy who I think is very solid there at left tackle, and if he has a solid year, could be a guy who's a guy flying under the radar right now, can start rising up draft boards. And then Tommy Kramer, he's playing right guard, 6'6", 319 pounds. Robert Hainsey's going to play right tackle. Kramer, a guy to watch out for, can play both tackle and guard. But the defense is really what is going to stand out for the Fighting Irish. You have Khalid Kareem, you have Julian Okwara. Julian Okwara is a legitimate, potential first round defensive lineman slash, I think really he's going to be a 3-4 outside linebacker. 6'5", 240 pounds, 17 tackles for loss, 10.5 sacks, including 8 a season ago. If he goes double-digit sacks, he could very well end up being a first-round pick. And then Alohi Gilman, the free safety, 5'11", 201 pounds, the transfer from Navy. I thought that he really assumed a leadership role there in the secondary. 94 tackles, 5 pass breakups there. He and Jalen Elliott, they're going to form quite a tandem there in the secondary for the Irish. Jalen Elliott, 6'1", 210 pounds, 4 interceptions last year to go along with 7 pass breakups. So Louisville is going to have their hands full going against the Irish, and it's one of those matchups that I just don't see a way where Louisville is going to win this game. They don't have a guy like Lamar Jackson playing the quarterback position. They're picked to finish among the lowest ranked among all ACC among all ACC teams. Sorry, and then Scott Satterfield, brand new head coach coming over from Appalachian State. They have Seth Dawkins at receiver. I think he'll be solid. Mekhi Becton, the left tackle, 6'7", 355-pound junior. If he wants to put on some good tape, really block, do a great job against Julian Okwara and Khalid Kareem. If he can keep them from getting into the backfield, then his draft stock is really going to shoot up. Defensively, Gigi Robinson, 6'4", 296-pound senior. He's really going to be one of the guys up front. Dorian Etheridge, the linebacker, 6'3", 230 junior. And then, let's see, Kame Pass is 6'1", 205, senior safety. He's going to be the leader there on the back end. But again, you're going to have Scott Satterfield is going to have his work cut out for him. I think he's still a couple of years away before really making an impact there for Louisville. So I think it's going to be tough sledding for them. I think Notre Dame runs away with that game. So we've covered all of week one, all the different matchups, things to watch out for. We've covered the second edition of the All Shoots team, the second annual All Shoots team, and then obviously we covered the week 0 ugly games. Hopefully we get some really good contests here in week 1. But hey, the first full week of college football is back. If you're not excited, then I don't know what's wrong with you, because college football, we've been waiting all summer for this. I cannot wait. This is going to be so much fun. You're going to have games Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, 5 days with college football, and I'll be right into the swing of things. And right after that game on Monday, Notre Dame and Louisville, a couple days later, you'll get to hear from me. We'll break it all down. I'm going to try to get to watch as many games as possible. I'm shooting for about 10 to 15 games that I'm going to watch from beginning to end, if not more. And we'll go ahead and break all those down next week. And obviously, we'll take a look at the week 2 matchups as well. So until then, everybody, enjoy this week of college football, the first full weekend of college football. And we'll talk next week. Until then, for readyforthedraft.com, this is the Ready for the Draft podcast. I am Gregg Schutze. Take care, everyone, and I am out of here.